part 2 of me documenting all of my ramblings and experiences from my evening revelations. I've just done a part 1 about my experiences of traveling across the other side of the world in spirit and visiting people, and visiting people's spirits or souls and communicating with them as if I was having a daily, regular conversation with a real person, and that those experiences are so real to me. And I want to just touch briefly on what I was being told last night. So those of you that are around often enough to hear my chatterings, I was brought up in a Christian home, and I did used to be very much a part of that church environment, which I left a good 2 decades ago, and I left for very many reasons. There were too many questions for me. A lot of it didn't make sense. Anyway, that's a story for another day. But in spirit, Jesus will often appear to me in visions. And I've had other experiences. I've met my native ancestors, and I have a Native American chief, who I then found out years later was my actual great uncle. So he's a literal family member, but I didn't realize this. Anyway, Jesus often does appear to me in visions and speaks in parables or scripture to me. Last night he turned up and he said, "Is it okay if I appear to you in the form of the common character Jesus?" I said, "Yeah, you can appear how you like." So, okay, so for today I'm going to appear as Jesus and deliver this message to you. And he said, there is just one universal energy, that is God. That is energy, that is the universe, whatever name you want to call it. That energy flows through every single thing, not just through humans. It will flow through everything. It exists everywhere, and it's a very neutral energy. However, we've all heard the story of the Garden of Eden and eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And since then, and I think we were supposed to eat that tree, because that is the whole part of your soul growth. Without the knowledge of good and evil, we could never journey through the process and get to the point of realization, of learning the lessons, that everything in the end is unified. I am the beginning and the end, Alpha and Omega. And sometimes we can get caught up in the storyline of being a human, and where we've been wronged, or where things have gone right, or when things have gone wrong, or when we feel like a victim and when we feel like a victor, and everything's like got these two sides of a coin. Yet I'm learning in the middle of all of those things is the truth. The middle, the balancing scale between right and wrong, and good and bad, and black and white, is an energy that if you could tap into that, you will see more clearly. And that's probably as far as I can speak on it without getting lost. But he was kind of saying to me, there's good and there's bad in everything. There's truth, but there is truth in everything also. And I remember leaving church, and I was taken into, and I'd seen a vision of this years and years before, and I thought it was blasphemy. I saw myself as a yoga teacher, and I was practicing, Eastern philosophies and meditation. And I saw once in church Ganesh, the elephant, and God said, "I'm that too." And I was like, what? Like, we can be so conditioned to believing something that we find it very hard to explore and go away from anything that doesn't quite fit in the box of what we were led to believe or our natural understanding of something. And that applies to anything in life, not just your religious standpoint. That can apply to if you've been brought up, boys behave like that and girls behave like that. It's very difficult to break away from that and say, no, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense to me. And I think a lot of my life and a lot of my experiences have been me saying, no, that doesn't make sense to me. And choosing to go and explore what does make sense to me. And I encourage you to do the same. However, in this dream, or this vision experience, it was Jesus, and he was saying, you know, there is a principle of growth, and that is the River Nile that I was speaking of the previous video. It's the River Nile is often represented as our spine and the 33 vertebrae. And if you look at the connections between the River Nile and the 33 vertebrae, that's a whole nother thing. But the idea is that you go from your root, from your basic survival, fight and flight, your basic safety. That's where we start. We start in that energy, and our lessons in life are supposed to let us go up into new energies where we eventually reach this the crown, the highest chakra, which is remembering who the F you are, that you are a spirit being with all these wonderful connections and gifts, natural, supernatural gifts, and life, the struggles that we face in life are actually blessings. They are actually gifts if you view it from the right perspective. And everything that I've experienced in life, I often find myself, if it's a really difficult lesson to learn, I will often find a little bit later down the road, I'll find myself on the other side of that story. And I will have to remember, hey, this was done to me. So how am I going to behave in potentially not doing that to another? Because I know how that feels. And I am obsessed with NDEs, like near-death experiences. I've had a few of my own, not literally death, but close to death. And I've escaped this body and been in spiritual realms. I can't even, millions of times. So I have experienced this. I'm obsessed with NDEs, and they all speak about you have a life review. You have moments where you see everything that you've done in your life and you feel it, whether it was a negative experience or a positive experience, and you see not only from your perspective, but from the perspective of how you potentially hurt another, or how your kind deed that you thought nothing of had a profound effect on someone else. And so that happens when you pass over and you suddenly see it all, and you see it from a different perspective. But we also have the opportunity to experience that here with open eyes, to see something that was done to me and how it really had a really difficult experience, and how that tremendously saddened me or hurt me. When I reach a point where potentially I could be that person and inflict that pain on another, I will hopefully choose not to, because you have a level of awareness. But the problem is, more often than not, we don't learn from that, and we continue to eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth type of mentality, and then we don't progress, we don't elevate, we don't evolve, we don't grow to a higher perspective. And it's not better, or it's not to say that you're better than, it's just a different level of understanding. And the higher or the more expanded you become, the closer to God or source or that energy you are. And then your whole perspective on how you operate in this life shifts. And that's my experience to date. I'll leave it there.